everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast about Lord of the Rings, the living card game by Fantasy Flight Games, where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from that game. And my name is Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And today we have a special episode for you. In honor of our 20th episode, we decided to have a guest host, and that guest host is the admin for the Lord of the Rings, the living card game Facebook page, which has garnered about 1,400 followers, and we're pretty proud to have him. We have Joseph Forster coming in all the way from Oregon somewhere. Hey, Joseph, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you guys?
We're doing pretty good here. We're glad to have you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on.
Just to let the audience know, what we decided to do was to let Joseph pick any one of the cards left in the card pool. And so up to this point, we have recorded 19 episodes, and this is the 20th. And so Joseph has not yet told either of us which card it's going to be. In all fairness, I did make a guess, and I told Grant off camera what that guess is going to be, so I'm hoping that it's right. And if it is right, people are going to ship me off to some place to gamble a lot. So, Joseph, would you like to reveal which card that you're choosing for us to talk about here on this episode of Card Talk?
So much pressure and anticipation. Yeah. I chose the hero card, Círdan the Shipwright.
Ah! Yes! I was 100% right! Yes! Yes!
I tried to pick something that I play a lot so you'd have a chance there.
Oh
Nicely
my gosh. Hey, Grant.
talk about stacking the deck in your favour, mate.
I kept saying that I'm hoping that I'm going to get this right, and if I'm right, you're going to ship me off to Las Vegas. And so I kept saying that to you, and I was hoping that that was going to subliminally put you into Círdan here. And so I told, even before I did all those things, I kept telling Grant, I said, he's going to pick Círdan. And he's like, how do you know? I said, well, he made a comment once on, I don't know, the Card Talk page or something, that, like, what would you like to see? And I was like, oh, he picked Círdan that time. So I'm going to say that he's going to pick Círdan.
Try to get me to do it. No,
and then I told Grant that that's what I was going to do. And then all of a sudden, here you go. Círdan the Shipwright.
Now he's going to be a smug bastard for the rest of the week.
Yeah, right.
Insufferable, yes.
For all the other episodes we have to record, I'll just be smug for the rest of the episode. That's okay.
We'll grant you that.
Right. And so just so our audience knows, Círdan is a 12 threat cost hero from the Spirit Sphere with 4 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, and 4 hit points. And Círdan's ability says to draw an additional card at the beginning of the resource resource phase, and his forced effect is after drawing that drawing cards at the beginning of the resource phase, you get to discard one of those cards. And so what we have here is a hero with some pretty good stats and some pretty interesting effects. And his traits are Noldor, and Noble. So, Joseph, take it away. It's your card, buddy.
Well, I've been playing him a lot lately. I think, he's one of the only 4 willpower heroes in the game, so he has a huge starting game advantage there. And then all the other cards that work with him give the deck a lot of flexibility and a lot of support that it's hard to get in one card. So I've really enjoyed him. I've been playing him in a variety of different decks.
What kind of heroes do you play with him? I know who I would play with him right away. I would play Éowyn with him, but that's just me looking at kind of... I don't play Círdan hardly at all, so that's where I'm coming from. But what heroes do you play with him mostly?
I have him in a dedicated Noldor deck, which is Aristor and Arwen. And then you've got a bunch of discard and to the sea and card manipulation that way. And he's a central part of that. But then he's kind of a glue hero for me. I can put him in a deck that I have something else going in, and he'll just make it work. He brings combos together twice as fast because you're drawing twice as many cards, finding those essential cards you need. So I put him in a side quest deck recently, and his high willpower and
is that with the Thrandir?
Thrandir,
yeah. Yeah. And some of those. How does that work? I mean, how does he work in that deck? I get how a side quest deck works, but how does he work in that deck?
He pulls the cards you need faster, and he provides that. Well, one of the hard parts about a side quest deck is you have to have willpower to clear the side quests for it to work. Otherwise, you just have a bad deck.
Right.
So his 4, I think I had Awen in there as well. Tactics Awen and then Thrindir, so you got 10 starting willpower.
Oh, and a trisphere. So you have tactics, lore, and spirit, right? Spirit. So,
and then he has easy access to leadership as well. So,
yeah.
And then the other thing I was doing in that deck is his ring, Narya, can ready allies and buff their stats. So I was using the Vigilant Dunedain for Defender, and even though he doesn't exhaust, you can use the effect on him and make that Vigilant Dunedain even stronger. So that's one of the things I was doing in that deck.
I think I need to gloat for a little bit. Well, Grant, you've been quiet. What do you think? What do you think of Kiernan?
I haven't played him very much. He's a very good questing hero, obviously with the 4, and his ability is still better than Bilbo's from the Lore Sphere. Yes, you have to discard one of the 2 cards you draw at the beginning of the round, but at the same time, you can get rid of some of the cards that you have to that get more powerful with each number in the graveyard. So, I actually like him. I've played him, like I say, in a few decks, and his flavor text is quite appropriate as well. He very tall he was, and his beard was long, and he was grey and old, save that his eyes were keen as stars, which actually suits the character of Círdan the Shipwright, being one of the first elves in Middle-earth and the leader of the elves from the Grey Havens. And the artwork done on this card, fantastic. But other than the few bits I've said, everything's been covered from him. I mean, I've ran him with Galadriel and Glorfindel. Just have an all-out quest deck for Noldor's. And it was power because I was able to get Light of Valinor plus both the rings in pretty much me opening 3 hands. Out of 3 hands. So I was able to basically just say, there's my board, there's a setup, just do what you want.
Yeah.
So David, what about yourself?
Well, what were you going to say, Joseph?
Like you mentioned, the Light of Valinor. Oh, sorry.
What's that? Go ahead. Light of Valinor, Joseph.
Yeah, the Light of Valinor, I think he is really the second best target for it. Glorfindel usually gets it right. It's his favorite attachment. But if you put it on this guy, he can quest for 4, then use his ring as well, and make your combat phase a lot easier, especially since you might be running more spirit. Your allies might not be as combat effective, but if you give him that +1 attack and +1 defense from Narya, then you can quest with him for 4, and then quest with your allies as well, and then ready your allies and do good work during the combat phase. So he's a centerpiece of several of my decks. Yeah,
I was going to say, and I think that with a stat line like that, he quests for a boatload, pun intended. He also has 2 attack and 2 defense, easily buffable with cards that fit right into his sphere, or into his into that card with the ring. I think that he's a very good hero. I don't use him as often as I should. I've said that, but when I look at him, the fact that he's got the solid stat line plus he's got the 4 hit points, I'd rather have more defense than hit points when I have a hero. Not, 4 hit points is a bunch, but just in general, I always think of hit points as kind of like a one-time deal. Like you have to be able to restore hit points somehow. Whereas defense, you can use over and over again every turn. And so if I had anything to change about his stat line, I may trade a hit point for defense, but that may change how much his threat cost is worth. Also, I think that card draw ability is amazing when you couple him with somebody like Eowyn, in kind of a non-standard deck. Eowyn can get rid of some of those cards that you would otherwise have in your hand. When I play the game, I hate having cards in my hand. I feel like cards in my hand is something like, it's like wasted opportunity.
I love cards in my hands. I want all the opportunities in front of me.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Grant and I talk about all the time is different philosophies, of deck building and card playing and things like that. And so for him to be able to kind of draw the cards out of your deck, and then to be able to use Spirit Eowyn to maybe get rid of some of those cards for a purpose, like you have a bunch of unique cards in your hand that you can't bring out again. I know that, when I have unique cards in my hand, I'm like, great, I have 3 copies of Rosie Cotton, then Rosie becomes a chump blocker. I don't want her to become a chump blocker, but she becomes a chump blocker. And so I think that there's a good way to kind of cycle through maybe some of those cards in your hand. Now, I don't know about not cards in your hand, but cards in your deck, I guess. I don't know about you, but I completely lost my train of thought. I was on something there. I was going to keep going about deck construction, about something, but I don't know.
Well, one of the other things is, even if you don't want to discard cards, just adding 1 silver heart, boom, you've doubled your base card draw level for the whole game. So if I can get that down turn 1 and just keep all those cards, that's even better. But if you do have a certain combo you want to set up and you need that to happen, you put 3 of each card in the deck. But you don't need 3 of those, you just need 1 of them. He'll let you set it up and not suffer from all those cards in hand necessarily.
Right. And that's the good part. Now, my philosophy also is that I'm not a big fan of large threat heroes. So 12 for me is not something. I mean, I would have to do that on purpose. I like starting with low threat, and my deck of choice, my archetype right now of choice is hobbits. But I could see how you kind of squeeze Círdan into something like a side quest deck, and he really helps you trigger the things that you need. What do you think, Grant?
I like him. I mean, like I say, I've used him. Yes, his threat is 12, which can be a bit daunting, especially if you say running it with Aragorn and Boromir and something of the like. But generally, if you're running something along that lines, you're going to have either threat reduction there, or you're going to have valor effects that you can be triggering that you want to be triggering. So the threat gain in that sense, I'm not so concerned with. It's more of the fact I like him as an all-round character. You're saying his hit points and his defense, you would have switched 1 point of his hit points with his defense point. But I think because of the fact that there is so many direct damage of cards that deal points to questing characters, that's why they give him 4 hit points and only 2 defense points. But for him having the 12 threat, you've got cards that can reduce your threat, like Elrond's Counsel, the Gladrum's Greeting. And
that's what I always come back to with spirit heroes, is that you can almost have spirit heroes that have, a starting threat of 15 or 16, and not have to worry about it as much in any other sphere because of the natural abilities that Spirit provides the player of lowering threat, and things like that. I mean, it's so Círdan being 12 in Spirit doesn't bother me as much as, Gandalf being 13 in neutral or Elrond being 12 in lore. Wait, Elrond 12 or 13 in lore?
Elrond's 13, Gandalf's 14.
Oh, right. How much is Peter Smog going to be? The Smog hero from the Wilds of Rovanion?
666.
Yeah. Right. As soon as you play him, you can't get enough Galadrim's greeting.
Right, and the cards I was thinking of earlier was like the Evening Star, and I couldn't think of the name. Where you want to get more.
There's a whole suite of cards that trigger off of in their discard pile. There's even some allies.
Yeah.
I haven't played that style of deck as much as just the draw everything, play everything you can, Aerostore style deck.
Yeah. You just draw until you can't draw no more.
There is a whole... Having that Noldor trait is getting more and more powerful. We have this whole set of cards, Elrond's Council, which is huge. Yeah, I run a deck with a 33 starting threat. I was playing it last night. And there's Tale of Tenuviel, which is great for your combos with Dunedain. There's the Heirs of Arendelle for location control. There's Fair and Perilous. There's a bunch of nice, cheap, very powerful spirit cards that trigger off the Noldor trait that you can work with.
What's the neutral card that that I run in my dwarf deck that I can't think of right now? The one that if it's discarded, it brings something into play. Oh, the Eredluin Minor, Eredluin.
Yeah, there's the hidden cache and Eredluin Minor. Unfortunately, they don't work with.
They don't trigger with
pull them into your hand.
Right, and then you have to So that's not.
They do work with like King Under the Mountain. You look at both cards and you discard one.
Right.
So it's just a bit different grammar, but.
Grammar is you have to have a degree in grammar sometimes to play this game,
and still get coaching.
Right? Yeah. I mean, you have that Facebook group that's, and I know that it's a merger of a couple of different groups at some point last year, kind of came together, and you're one of the admins on it. But there's a lot of rule clarifications on that, and some of the people that you wouldn't expect, some of the names in Lord of the Rings. I'm waiting for Caleb to ask a question about his own cards, but but I mean, you get some of these guys that are answering questions, and then they'll ask a question, and you're like, wow, I never really thought about it that way. What is the answer to it?
You get a game like this with so many phases and triggers and cards. You're going to have complex interactions, but yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's one of the reasons why I love the game. What were you going to say, Grant?
But you can't also expect everyone to know everything because there is so much to learn.
And even though you and me, we play a lot of it, but there's still cards that we've hardly ever played just because there's so many possibilities, which is one of the glories of the game, right?
And it's why I enjoy...
Like Bilbo, Lord Bilbo? We don't play Lord Bilbo?
I told you, David, we don't talk about it.
Yeah, if you compare Círdan to Lord Bilbo, only 3 more threat points.
Right, and just a couple more stats. I mean, the stat line just only slightly better than Lord Bilbo.
Really, I think it's doubled.
Yeah, at least. No, I think it's actually right. It's exactly doubled, right? 2112.
Like I said, it's doubled.
Yeah, it's exactly doubled. Wow.
Well, it's not quite because Bilbo has 1 willpower, doesn't he?
No, I thought you had. Oh no, it's one willpower, 1 attack, 2 defense.
Okay. And 2 hit points.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back to those hit points. So, what I find myself doing often in a deck is you start out with these big heroes. They're very powerful, but at a cost of engaging those enemies right away. But if I can get Light of Valinor on Círdan, he can quest and then take a defense before he exhausts his hit points. And by that point, you've got allies on the board. And then with his ring, he can inspire those allies to take it from there. But those hit points are certainly worth it.
Oh, yeah.
His attack is mostly wasted, but other than that.
Yeah, but you could make it work out, unexpected courage, natural pairing in the spirit sphere without too much, shenanigans. There's all those,
If you just want to make them outright beefy, then yeah. And if you want to even throw one further out there, you hire on a Song of Battle, you hire a couple of Rivendell Blades in there, or something of the like, and there you go. You've got them attacking for 2 with no defense.
Right. Well, those are the types of things you can do when you're bringing in those huge sphere, or those huge tri-sphere decks that do that. I just worry about resource generation.
No, I said, Song of Battle.
The song, right?
There you go.
Steward. You guys want to run Steward in every deck that you build.
Hey, the deck's there. There's no Steward in it. It's in the sideboard.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's be fair. Every card is in your sideboard, Joseph.
Well, it's really in the sideboard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what do you think? Is there other things that we need to talk about? This is a blast. I think we could sit here and talk about Círdan all night. But is there anything else Is there anything else that we need to discuss so that I can be even more right for this episode?
Drop it, David, before you get too far ahead.
Not anything coming to mind. Although he has been using a couple power decks recently.
What would you call how would you define a power deck? Let me start there since you brought it up.
Well, the easy definition is whatever C-Stand uses to kill everything.
Okay. I've referred to those as broken decks, or errata inspiration decks.
Right.
Just look at Boromir.
I don't know what the strict definition of power deck is. It's not broken. It's just a very efficient and maybe not exciting, but very efficient and good deck for getting things going. So I call that a power deck.
Yeah, it's something that
he has his one deck to rule them all. And that one features Círdan as well. That it's a Kaldara 2.0. That's definitely a power deck. And then I've made my own version of the Noldor deck, which I would consider one of the strongest decks that I've made and most well-rounded that I've been able to beat a lot of things with.
How long have you been playing the game, Joseph?
Since it came out.
Okay, so you were one of the very first, when the core set came out 8 years ago or 7 years ago, you were there playing it.
Yep.
Okay. I've only been playing for about 4 years, so you're twice as old as I am in Lord of the Rings. Do you have any other card background? I used to play Magic the Gathering, and then I learned to hate that game very quickly because it sucks all your money away. And then I got into So what's your gaming background or card gaming background?
This is the first in-depth card game I've worked with. I got into hobby gaming about the same time this game came out, and I played a variety of games. Besides this, I dabbled in the Arkham Horror card game as well. I played some of the other LCGs, but yeah, I do some miniature gaming, a lot of board gaming.
But your heart is with the rings.
This is my true love.
You got to be careful nowadays. Grant Fantasy Flight just put out the Legend of the Five Rings, so his heart is with the Lord of the Rings and not the Legend of Five Rings, not L5R.
Yeah, this is the game I spend the most energy on and really enjoy.
Yeah. What drew you to the game?
The theme, really. So,
you always loved Lord of the Rings, or is it more than that?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed it. My dad read it to me when I was too young to get it, and I read it myself when I was 10 and still didn't get it, and kept reading it.
Right.
And you still don't get it.
Right.
I appreciate it a lot more now, but when I got to the end, as a 10-year-old, I'm like, what? This is stupid.
Right. Now,
well, as my friends put it to me, why can't they just jump on an eagle, fly over the mountain, and throw it in?
There's a really funny YouTube video about that, right? How it should have ended. Where they just all jump on Gwaihir. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know. They all jump on.
That wouldn't be good literature.
Yeah, right. He wanted an epic novel, not a novella. Tolkien was looking for quantity. Not quality. Oh wait, no.
Well, he certainly got quantity because, as I've shared with David, I've got all his literature there, and there's tons of it.
When I bought the game, I bought it for my brother-in-law for a present, and then I started buying expansions so we could play them, and then eventually it became mine.
Right. Do you?
He still plays occasionally, but
do you have the complete card pool, including Nightmare, or?
Yep.
Yeah, you're one of those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Don't worry. You're in good company. Actually,
I haven't played every Nightmare deck yet, but a lot of them.
Yeah, I because I'm 4 years behind you. I have the Crossings of Poros coming to me this week with 9 new Nightmare scenarios.
Have you played any of your Nightmare scenarios yet, David?
No, but I have played some of my Gen Con scenarios.
Nice.
Specifically the Battle of Lake Town. And to actually say that I played the Battle of Lake Town is a gross understatement. I think I set up... Yeah. Well, I set it up just long enough for Smog to make his first attack and kill everything that I put on the board.
Please tell me you were playing Hobbits.
That's cruel, but I like it.
No, I wasn't. I was playing an elf deck. I have Legolas, Haldir, and
Glorfindel.
Oh yeah, Spirit Glorfindel in a deck, and I don't know. I was just playing around, and I was like, "Let's try." And my friend was like, "I have one buddy that I play with here sometimes," and we were playing, and all of a sudden it was like, I think. Well, the first time we got through to like stage 3B, and both of us were looking at each other. We were like, "There's no way that we're playing this right." Which happens, that when you get that far along in the game, that it can't be. That you're doing something wrong, especially in those Gen Con scenarios. And then we realized that we did something incorrect, and we were like, "Oh!" We played it again, and we got through 1.5 rounds, and we were toast.
The first stage on that is horrible. You have to get to stage 2 so you can start to put out the fires, and then it can be manageable. But yeah, it can combo on you and just kill everything.
Yeah, and and that's another thing that I really love about the game in general is just that. Because it's a cooperative game, they don't hold really anything back. The guys at Fantasy Flight, they make no apology for making cards that really put you in a hole at the beginning. Because if you could beat every scenario every time, it wouldn't be fun. And so they have to develop these scenarios that require new styles of deck building, and that can just flatten you in one turn if they need to. And a lot of people on the forums, including yours, complain about it, but I think it's vital to the game and its success.
Well, at least
totally agree.
Alternate forms of the game to play where you can take out some cards, or sleazy mode, or
you can
plenty of
play
options.
mode or something. Yeah.
It's not the easy mode, it's sleazy mode. Get it right.
Sleazy and easy are actually slightly different. Sleazy, same cards, more
sleazy is when Bill Fernie's out all the time. That's sleazy.
Or the pickpocket, right?
Yeah, right. So,
okay, so let's ring Kurdan.
Are we way off topic?
David, what would you ring Kurdan as?
Well, I don't use Kurdan very much, and as we've learned throughout all these podcasts, the ringing system is really subjective to my own playing style. While I like Kurdan as a hero, I don't play him very much because of his high threat. Now, in terms of thematics, in terms of his stat line, in terms of his abilities, I like all of those abilities, and I wouldn't hesitate to use him. But because I don't use him, I can't give him a really high, or maybe even a rating that the audience may want me to give him, or even Joseph, who plays with him all the time. So, but I think he's got some positives, like he's in the Spirit Sphere, and I think that his stat line is really impressive. So, but because I don't use him, and I've never been really drawn to using him before this point, I think I have to stick with 6 rings. How about you, Joseph?
I think he is more flexible than people give him credit for, and he has a lot of power behind him. I encourage people to check him out and try him in a few decks, and I would probably give him, in your arbitrary system, I will give him an arbitrary 3 rings.
3 rings? Wow, that puts him at the high list of rings that we got. Grant, what do you think?
Me personally, I like them from what I've played with them. I'm giving them 4 rings.
Well, join us next time as we discuss Send for Aid, the very first player side quest that we're going to tackle in our Card Talk series. So have a great time.